Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions, special episode on a Monday. We don't normally go
All right.
on a Monday. Here he is.
I'm
Jeff's
parked.
just pulled up. All right, we're live now, Jeff, by the way. Warner's here, the good doctor, and Jeffery Anderson's back. We're going to be talking about Rufus. A load of information dropped on Friday, 9:30 or something like that. I got a message from Warner. So I said, we better jump on it and take a look. And there is a number of articles associated with it. So it's not necessarily a full paper, but it does tag papers. And we'll talk about those as well. So guys, welcome to the show. Ellis, how you doing? If you want to unmute your microphone.
Doing well. You?
Yep, all good. Remind me again, many moons ago, when you was a wee chap, you did a lot of work pertaining to AI, not as
That's right.
Today. And what was it? Do you want to go through and let people know why you're the good doctor?
So there are a lot of different types of AI. When people are talking about AI, usually in the news today, they're talking about LLMs, generative AI, that sort of a thing. Different tools are appropriate for different jobs. And there are a lot of things that were already done well prior to LLMs and that LLMs can't do well today. Like, for example, flying a helicopter. If you want to, or you have a helicopter drone or something like that, you wouldn't want to try to control it with an LLM. Those were already very well controlled by certain kinds of neural networks. There are so many things that neural networks can't do, that neither neural networks nor LLMs. And so the things in artificial intelligence, the areas that I worked in the most were ones where you need to, so I worked with robotics, and in robotics, you want to be able to control things in a very predictable way. So you don't want much randomness, like every time you query the LLM, you're likely to get a slightly different answer or a very different answer. And the robots were working on, they were laboratory robots that were doing scientific experiments. And so it needs to be the case that the researchers who are utilizing these robots, that they know exactly, or can at least understand exactly, why the robots are doing what they're doing. And so you need to be able to have a trace of reasoning that comes out of it. And so I did things where the reasoning was something that you could follow the reasoning was clear behind all of them, that there wasn't randomness in it. So you could bring in randomness as well, but then this was a targeted randomness as opposed to just kind of inherently being a part of the system. And then after that, the data that was obtained from the scientific experiments, for example, we were doing a lot with DNA engineering in yeast cells, so making yeast cells bigger or smaller, or changing other aspects of them. And so after the experiment was done, you measure the results, or while you're running the experiment, you're measuring results. And then these results need to be fed back in to see, well, what do we do the next time? If we're trying to get larger yeast cells, and the first round, we got, certain things we did seemed to improve the size a bit. Other things that were completely different also improved it. And then there are all these other things that didn't. So what do we do in the next round? And this was also a part of the artificial intelligence, but very much statistic based. And so where you use the statistics to go through and assess what are the most promising parts of the last experiment that we should take forward and try to make modifications on to see if we can optimize that even more.
Yeah, sounds good. So, Jeff, let me bring you in next. So do you want to unmute? So guys, you've met Jeff before. We've done 2 advanced series. We've got a few more of those lined up. What's piqued your interest? Just quickly, we pulled you in for this for Rufus. What do you want to drop some bars today? What do you want to cover before we move to Warner to give out a bit of a breakdown?
So in our listing optimization, especially for like the tea company, there's certain attributes like organic, natural, gluten-free, but there's also certain municipal health benefits to tea. So how do we get that into our listing? Especially you have to stay away from it, be careful, because some of it may be restricted. Like you can't say helps with dietary if you don't have FDA approval for that. But some people do take like our lemon ginger for sleeping, or green tea has certain benefits. So how do we capture that, either through images, titles, or bullets, or maybe even through alt text, and be able to just get displayed on those type of search terms? And I think those are going to be very, very common Rufus questions. Like, what is the best tea at night? You're going to want to take something that's caffeine free, that kind of slows your mind down a little bit. And that's where we're really looking to expand on the whole Rufus, is be more subjective with the search and not so much objective.
Yeah, indeed. Juana, do you want to go first, as you picked up on all the information, and then I'll go over some of the key points, and then we'll have a chat.
Yeah, 100%. And what I wanted to say is that, as Jeff mentioned from the beginning, and I think it was the beginning of February when Rufus was announced in beta as a test for a small group of people, and then was released to everybody in the US. The main thing on our mind was, how do we optimize our listings for Rufus, and how do we put relevant information so it gets picked up, so we do show in the results. With that said, all the questions behind, experts in the domain was how it works, how it gets trained, how it picks up information. So everybody rushed to the Amazon Science website, searching for Rufus related papers, right? And you never could find anything because there was nothing there.
Well, I think the closest we got was the AI. You come with something, I run it through a load of my tools, and it wasn't 100% related. Exactly. And there's the AI assistant paper that come out in Feb, I think, and that's been the closest. But there is now more that has appeared in terms of, since related to the article. So you've got the technology behind Amazon's Gen AI powered shopping assistant Rufus. So that was on Amazon.science. Yeah,
Friday. Yes.
And then associated with that, or linked out to that, was automated evaluation of RAG pipelines with exam generation. So now they're helping us put some of the pieces together by exposing the cross-referencing of some of the technology behind it. There was another one called using teacher knowledge at inference time to enhance student modeling. And then there's new contrastive learning methods for better data representation. And there was more of off of Amazon.science on Spectrum Tree, how we built Rufus, Amazon's AI-powered shopping assistant. So that goes a little bit more in depth to what was posted on Amazon.science. But as a Rufus paper, there isn't one. But now we start to put some of these elements together, because they've shared some of the works and some of the technology they're being used in order to power Rufus.
We have the team of scientists coming up and started, that's how the blog came out, because they, started talking about how they trained and how they thought, the thinking process, and what Rufus takes into consideration. So we officially have something to put our hands on and understand how that works.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned in the show notes, the key point of this, in terms of the information they provided, was the fact that it's a custom-based large language model, which is more specific for shopping data, including obviously the Amazon catalog, reviews, Q&As. I'll put a graphic up later as we start to tie stuff in. The other thing is using a Retrieval-Augmented Generation, which is a RAG system. So this goes beyond Rufus just on the training side. It's pulling in variant information from reliable sources, not just like customer reviews, but also API data to tie all this in, and externally on the web. We don't know where, but they're obviously aligning with certain things there in terms of qualifying information. And then part 3 of this is reinforced learning. So Rufus improves over time leaving with the customer feedback, and then it's constantly enhancing his ability to then provide more and more useful advice, which it should do anyway. And I think the key thing here is going to be how it's built, the AI chips and the streaming architecture to support something of that scale. So they use Trainium and Inferrienta, I think it is, which is all built on top of AWS. And in terms of the streaming architecture, what they're doing there is they're using token by token, which means in this case word by word, to ensure that the shoppers don't experience delays whilst it's interacting with the AI assistant. Ellis, anything you want to say here and add?
Sure. So there are a lot of points. I'm not going to be able to, remember them all, but RAG is super cool. I don't know how many of you guys have used this Retrieval-Augmented. What's it called? Retrieval-Augmented
Generation. I've got one. Anthony Lee built me one for a book that with a vector data about, which is breaks it down in single words semantically, and the more you train it, the more it sounds like you. It's incredible what he's done.
Yeah. Great. And so they're not too difficult to build. You can relatively easy, like you could go out to YouTube, you could look up there are tons of tutorials in creating RAGs yourself. And in 15 minutes, if you're a programmer, in 15 minutes, you can follow one of these tutorials and have a RAG system set up. And I mean, a prototype one. And it really is great for being able to improve the answers that you can get back on a system. So that's totally makes sense for Amazon, because they're not going to, they're always going to have things in their product catalog and customer reviews and stuff that weren't in their LLM.
Yeah.
And even if they were in their LLM, they're not there verbatim necessarily. I mean, if they were part of the training. And so being able to go out and grab them exactly as they are in the most up-to-date form, that's great. Let's see, there are a couple, there's another.
Let's talk about reducing latency and stuff as an engineer and then working at scale. So they're talking about the AI chips that they're using because of obviously dealing with minimal latency. Is there anything you can expand on there from your knowledge as an engineer?
Well, super important. Sometimes you'll open up ChatGPT, for example, you'll give it a question and it can take, a while for it to type out its whole answer. And so what the streaming does is it allows it to start giving you those words back before it's done. Whereas before streaming was started, it would generate the whole thing and then send it all out to you. So just part of the responsiveness. What they're really talking about here is an engineering system. It's not like a scientific breakthrough or anything along those lines. They're doing they're working on a really cool task and how to put together certain systems in a way that makes sense for Amazon, where they hope that it'll make sense for Amazon shoppers. Just using tools from here and there and whatnot that are widely available.
Okay. Jeff, let me bring you in here, and then we're going to go back to Warner. Let's talk about some optimization stuff and see if I'm going to try and bring up my iPad, because it'll help trigger people to not that kind of trigger, but it'll help people trigger some ideas about the discussion around Rufus. I've covered a series of areas here. Let me see if I can get this to present on the screen. One of those, what I made earlier, kind of vibes. Let me see if I can get that. All right, let's see if I can open this up. So what I've put this together for some of the key elements. It's not conclusive. So obviously here you've got title. Let me get my markers. Your title, bullets, description, back-end terms, technical attributes, A+ data, main image attributes, which I'll come to over here. Then the whole of your image stack, and then you look at the object recognition on that as well. So everyone can see the screen, yeah?
Yeah.
And then you've got, as it says, alt tags, customer reviews, Q&As, and in stores. Don't know too much about that side. And then I mentioned over here about attributes. Now, obviously, attributes are very important, often quite different from one product to another. One has built a bot for that pulls in and recognizes it based around the attributes for your listing. We've got all the catalog data for every category, which has to be updated every 60 days. But basically, it'll give you a lot of ideas in terms of attributes, because there's going to be things like warranty and stuff and some safety and care instructions, but you might have uses in there and then you've got 5 blank fields. I mean, I'm at a loss of, like, I would say 90% of backends I've seen, 90% of the backends are, the attributes are not completed. And this plays a critical role, because I mentioned here in the science papers, I mentioned to Ellis the other day, like, one of the most common thing through going through over, I think it's 1,023 papers and more since. The most common thing that comes up, obviously, everyone knows about Cosmo and the PAM attributes and EVM, which doesn't require so much information on the attributes, which Juan has done an article on. Nearly everything you read there, and what integrates, the biggest thing that often gets covered, or the most recorded word that I see in these papers, is attributes. And it seems to be, it's almost connected with everything, especially when it comes down to search and retrieval. Obviously, it's going to play a big role for Rufus. Now, this is all sexy at the moment because we've got Amazon Comprehend. So make sure you know they're your friends, along with recognition. I spoke to Anthony the other day, and he probably put it into really good words. He's, you know, we're looking at now with not just optimizing listing as we usually do, but we're looking at attribute optimization, which is beneficial to shopping assistants like Rufus, from, you know, object recognition to sentiment scoring and beyond. I mean, there's also the breakdown of the tool that you and Anthony built. And then I'll put this down in the corner. This is not relevant for today, but we've covered this in the cold start, the reality of the cold start. When we look at the initial best guess, which is the prior, basically what it's doing in order to do the best guess is taking attributes from similar products. So attributes is always playing a massive role. Jeff, I'll let you step in now. Let's have a chat. There'll be plenty of stuff I've missed off, but what do you want to discuss here?
Well, one test that we're doing with attributes is actually with one of the tea flavors. In the attributes, there's actually a diet type because it's a grocery product. And we changed the diet type to gluten-free.
Yeah.
And then we did a data dive and, you know, brand analytics, top search terms, and SQP. And we found all the tea-related keywords with gluten-free in it. So we switched over our attribute to gluten-free. We found all the keywords on Amazon with gluten-free, and now we're going to try to push those. We also changed our order of images, so gluten-free is higher up, like the tag of that. And then we're also sending Google traffic. So more Google is more subjective, not objective product searches. So you like best gluten-free tea and things like that. And we're going to see, like, if we build semantically a keyword pool around an attribute that we change, how well we can rank on that.
Yeah.
And so that's one test that we're doing. And I also, reading this article, correct me if I'm wrong, I kind of had a busy weekend and it came out on Friday, but they are kind of scoring or ranking different data sets that they're pulling from, correct, in relevancy?
As far as I remember, yeah.
So I kind of think that there's 3 important data sets, especially when they're building their reg. One is going to be the title. The second is going to be the bullets. And then for a reg system, it's really easy to pull a PDF up into it. I think a user manual. Every listing could have a user manual on it.
Yeah.
And I think optimizing your user manual to say, like, gluten-free, or in the tea world, hot tea or iced tea, to pull both of them to get those attributes up there. And then I also think, not that all parts of the listing are equally important, but I think those are the three main.
Yeah.
And then also, that also mentioned about external traffic. And that one's kind of interesting because is it pulling from Google? Is it doing some type of Google search on it, or, like a Perplexity style search?
Mm-hmm.
We know for a fact that Amazon's looking at Walmart for the pricing.
Yeah.
Are they pulling anything else off of Walmart that we don't know? I mean, these are just questions that I have, like, after reading that article.
Yeah.
That are they going to make a difference? Or are they not going to make a difference? I don't know the answer to that yet.
Well, they pull from everywhere anyway. There's been no limit to it, isn't it? Ellis, what do you know? Because when they had the Alexa.com, they that was pulled down a few years ago. I can't remember the reason. I think it all got hot, didn't it, around situations with the pricing issues. What was it called? Price Advantage. And obviously with that, they were able to scrape the web and be able to compare. But I think shortly after that happened, when it all went to Congress and stuff, they pulled it down. So we know they've got millions of data points and it's coming from everywhere. So it wouldn't surprise me. And it goes back to the external stuff. So if you want to, it sounds like obviously they're training all on their own data, the catalog, there's a vast catalog and stuff like that. But in terms of answering questions and coming and getting the right information, surely you have a resource or multiple resources that is having the opportunity to correct. They are providing the right information in terms of the questions they're responding to. Julian says here, let me see if I can bring this up. Adding attributes in the back end also improves the IDQ score, giving access to more deals from Amazon. Probably also improves the overall SKU performance. Totally agree. Most of it will. Chris says hello. Steph says, Danny, I love you. Thanks for putting this on. I love you too, kid. I'll see you soon. Going back to Wana, let's talk about some PPC stuff as well. Related.
Yes, but before we jump into that, I do want to mention one thing. They also talk about having a personalized shopping assistant. That's what the whole goal of Rufus is at the end. And what we know is that as you interact with it, it learns from your behavior interaction, right? So at the end of the day, what you have on the page, 100% it needs to be relevant. So it can be pulled and attributed to a specific question or search or however, it gets to be pulled out. But then it also takes behavior into consideration. And at the end of the day, you have a personalized experience for each shopper. It's still in the beginning and it's still learning because Rufus learns as you interact with it, and it's getting better and smarter over time. And I know Max today, Max Sinclair put on LinkedIn an interesting post about his experience in buying with Rufus. And he mentioned it's still first version. And it's true, because if you think about it, it just got released in May for everybody. So it's still in the beginning in terms of what is being trained and how it's pulling data. What I do wanted to say in terms of the advertising that you mentioned, Danny, is I think nobody expected so fast to see advertising results in Rufus displaying products, but we saw that happening in September. Of course, it will always come down to relevancy. So you will most likely not be able to have your campaigns shown in Rufus results if your product is not relevant. So going back to the information that you have on the image and in the back end of the image. But yes, that is coming. And it's kind of like blindfolded at the moment from an advertiser standpoint, because you don't have any type of results yet to see where the
there's no reporting for it yet. It's saying that you can use it, right? So people can run ads, but you're very limited, if any, reporting.
But you run the ads, but you don't know if it's being attributed to a normal search or it goes from Rufus, right? So at the
what
moment,
they're saying is you're born yesterday, spend more of the money you haven't got with Amazon, and you'd be all right, we'll take care of you. Yeah, that's what they're saying at the moment.
Exactly. So fingers crossed that will change, because I'm really curious to see reports coming from Rufus interaction.
Tired with 2 Ds, spells like my spelling. Important to update Rufus answers with organic, personalized answers. What do you think? Jeff, start with you on that one.
Yeah, part of that listing bot that we're building with Anthony Lee at the end is going to be a Q&A generator.
Yeah.
So, and you can have your friends and family ask all the questions you want, and you can answer them.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why you couldn't generate 50 questions from ChatGPT or from whatever AI you want based on your product and based on the Rufus questions, and then go in and answer them yourself. And we know the science papers are saying, it's pulling from the Q&A. So, and especially if you're launching products, that's one of the only ways you can preload your products or preload your detail pages, because you really can't buy reviews.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Q&A is important.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Ellis, do you want to add anything here?
Sorry, nothing particular comes to mind to add at this point. Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do then, because I want to use your brain. I've got some notes on this.
There is one little thing, maybe just a quick technical thing that might be of interest. We were talking about one of the system getting better. And in the articles, they're mentioning the reinforcement learning. And so just a little note on how reinforcement learning works technically is it could be, for example, there are all kinds of different ways it can work, but a common way would be that it might have certain weights, like Jeff was saying, for titles and bullet points and the user manual, and it puts weights on these. And as it gets feedback on, yes, this was good, no, this wasn't, it'll every once in a while go back and update the weights to see if those updated weights get better feedback. And so that would just be one example of, it might be that it finds that for, certain products, a 50% weight on the title is better than a 60% or something like that. So just a little technical note of how reinforcement learning can change the weighting.
Which kind of gets my mind to the 28-day of refreshing, because we know that Rufus keeps your chat open for 28 days. You can clear it and start from fresh anytime you want, if that's something that you want to have. But otherwise, it will clear every 28 days, which maybe could indicate what you just said about refreshing the weight of how they get that feedback and how you interact with it every 28 days, because we know it's always stored. Data continuously gets stored and refined.
Well, some of what they would especially be using for reinforcement is some sort of yes/no feedback, for example, saying, yes, this was good. Some way of saying, yes, it was good or bad. And that they can store arbitrarily long. And they don't need your whole chat history for it. Yeah.
So this is quite interesting. This is from one of the Associated articles. So basically what this is, it's a 4-step process here. So you've got the question generation. Effectively what they're doing is the questions, they're using obviously the large language model, but they now need to filter it by quality type, diversity, and ensure that it's got a higher standard. And then it moves into the exam mode, because there's, as I mentioned at the top of the show, there's 4 or 5 components that are linked to the original listing. So the exam evaluation is basically, it's like a candidate performance, and it's scored using techniques, which I think it's penalized log lookalike ranking. Basically what it is using methods to adjust the score on your length, but it's just there to ensure fairness. And then 3 is based on the corpus knowledge extraction. So taken from raw data from APIs, document libraries, and databases. They're then processed, split into chunks, and then filtered for quality content. And then that ensures the knowledge used for the question generation is relevant and accurate. And the last part is the continuous improvement. So experts review the questions and improve them iteratively. And then basically they're optimizing the exam's relevance and effectiveness. So the entire system there is a continuous cycle loop: generation, evaluation, improvement for better exam quality and performance. I mean, Ellis, at the top of the show, you were talking about that. You were doing that yourself prior to AI as we see today. A lot of the stuff that you was doing was feedback iteration in the early days with autonomous. Yeah. Who else is? If people got questions, feel free to give us a shout and drop them in there. Stan says, Danny, thanks for putting this together. Great panel of amazing individuals, and thanks for the guys for sharing their time and knowledge. Luke says, good show, guys. All right, where do we want to go next, Jeff? We want to talk a little bit more about optimizing the listing. I'll bring back the iPad graphic, and then we can start running through some of these in a bit more depth, because then it'll be able to trigger some stuff off of there for the conversation as well. So give me a moment to see if I can get that set up. In the meantime, Wana, you will be talking and holding court on the show, so there's no silences. So Wana, start talking.
Amazing. Yes, definitely. So yeah, trying to understand, I'm actually curious and genuinely curious to see if any more related science papers will come, because at the end of the day, what we have right now on Amazon Science is a blog post, right, where we are able to pull all that information. But I think it would be interested to put our hands on something more technical. This is still super helpful, especially on how they explain how they train Rufus, right? Because normal LLMs, what they mention is you train them on a broad data set. And then you customize it for a specific domain. They were not able to do that for Rufus. They wanted from the start to have it trained on shopping and helping customers with a more personalized shopping experience. So they used the entire Amazon catalog. And the funny thing is that they always utilize the same sequence: entire Amazon catalog information, product reviews, Q&As, and then other internet resources that Amazon finds relevant. And they always utilize that in the same sequence. And even when you go on Amazon and you want to ask Rufus something, especially on the web version, you are able to see that information is being retrieved in the same order, which kind of like, what Ellis was mentioning about how they weight data. If in the beginning, that's the thought process and the sequence that they utilize, like relevancy, behavior, and then maybe questions and how others interacted with the product.
Cool. Right, let's start at the top then. Let's throw around some ideas now, starting with you, Jeff. Let's talk titles and bullets. It's not just about lexical match anymore. We've got semantic, got BERT, and titles by Amazon's suggestion. When you run them through their listing analyzer, you basically end up with all your keyword strips and suggestive changes that you have no interest in. Where are you going with titles, Jeff?
We've seen an evolution. I mean, since the early days when I started back in 2016 to like now. And it used to be you would like stuff your title as much as you possibly could with keywords. And, you would have, it would make no sense if like you actually tried to read it. But now Amazon's starting to shorten titles. They're, you can only have a certain amount of characters. And if I know there was one Amazon Science article that mentioned about the, if somebody's looking for shoes for pregnant women, they're going to look for comfort. They're going to look for non-slip. So, it's relating those attributes to it.
Common sense, yeah. Part of the knowledge graph, of course.
So I think with titles, I still think you want your main keywords in your title, but I think you want to write it to a way that, on that common sense path that you're talking about, Anthony, Danny, sorry. I haven't quite cracked the code on that.
He's all right. He was a man who coined the honeymoon period. I don't mind. Yeah, go on.
What was I saying? I haven't quite cracked the code on that, but I think a shorter, more concise, subjective title that can cover broader attributes with your main keywords is going to be the key to it going forward.
Yeah. And obviously on mobile, titles tend to be shorter anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to get as much as the key information in first in the limited characters that you got. One or any difference of change point of opinion in terms of title, Ellis?
I totally agree with that, especially since Amazon at Accelerate this year announced that they will be changing the titles randomly. So at the moment, what we can estimate is that they are going to just reorder keywords within the title, not necessarily reinvent your titles, which can be dangerous at this point. I want to be honest with you. That's a bit scary, especially with, then you mentioned 90% of listings not being fully optimized in the back end.
I say 90. I don't have a statistic on that. I'm just saying nearly everything I look at has missing attributes.
I agree with you. I would say that even maybe more than 90%. That's what we are looking at the moment. But yeah, rearranging and having optimized titles, shorter, more relevant.
Yeah. And a key component of that is obviously that's all the information they really need, because it's no longer just about lexical matching, because you've got semantic, got BERT, and then you've got parts of Cosmo in terms of in the matching side. So I'm keeping these separate. In the matching side, it does fill the semantic gap there between semantic and BERT in terms of the conversational and the similar types, because you've got the common sense as well. So it's another area that it fills out. So if you think they are utilizing those various different match types that are stacked on top and more that we don't even know about, they need key information. What we do, we're looking to get as much information indexed as possible with the most relevant keywords, and that goes throughout the listing. But what we want and what we're looking for isn't as relevant to Amazon. They focus on the customer, brands focus on their business, and it doesn't matter about where the conversion comes from, because Amazon, the house wins. You want as many conversions as possible. Amazon gets all the conversions regardless of who the seller is. So when you think of it in trying to take a step back and look at it like that, what they're actually teaching us when we go, look at that listing, it's shit, they stripped all the bullet points out, haven't got a clue what they're talking about, titles been cut back down. They're basically saying, well, that's all we need. We've got the technology, we'll take it from here. To the point, like you said earlier, where they're going to make changes on a customer level to the title, but it's a rearranging of words in the title versus actually writing a brand new one. That's the clarity I've got from it.
One thing that we saw a few months ago, so I think with the titles, it's a very dynamic kind of situation as Amazon's changing things around. Interestingly, though, a few months ago, a client of ours did some major tests with this, where they had changed one of their products to have a shorter title, and it did better. So it was after the title change, there was a marked increase in sales. And so this was initially, really exciting. Maybe we can do this with the other products. And the results were just mixed, completely mixed. I mean, and it's always.
I thought you were going to say there, Ellis, we've got a proven strategy. 997, you can have it.
Yeah. And who knows whether or not shortening the title was the thing that actually.
But that's why you got to test everything. Right. But there's so many things in play, isn't there? Right. I mean, we've tested where everything was sentiment based. Like we took a dead listing that was doing 3 units a day and took it up to like 10 units a day. Try it on other stuff, nothing happens. So it's just constant testing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you saying, kid? Let's talk bullets. Drop some bars for me.
Especially after the 15th of August, when they also started mixing and matching information in the bullet points, because there again this year we saw AI and Amazon announced that they gave sellers what was it, Daniel, like 3 weeks to optimize the titles, and everything that was non-compliant, they would go in and change it. And we saw that with bullet points getting changed because they were not allowed to have emojis anymore or anything that would affect readability. Because at the end of the day, from my perspective, it's not that shorter titles or shorter bullet points can help in any way with the conversion. It comes down to keeping information relevant and helping with the readability, because I would say the shopping journey, they know it gets shorter and shorter, and they want shoppers to make a faster purchase decision because it helps with the sell-through of everything, right? So from my point of view, it was first the bullet points, making sure that they are optimized, keep it relevant, then the title. So we are going in a direction where you just need to make sure that everything you have on the listing is relevant, rather than strategies that were a couple of years ago when you wanted to be indexed for everything, even if they were broadly related to your product. That's why in the back end, for so many listings, you still have a lot of terms that are not relevant to the products that you are selling, right? And like an insight, when this year's sponsored product targeting campaign started generating keywords, you could actually see keywords that were not absolutely relevant neither to your product or to your competitor product, because you were targeting competitors, and those terms were like so awkward. You could realize that was due to the fact that the competitor that you were going after most likely was indexed for some terms that were not directly related to their product. So you would show up and you would need to negate those. And it all comes down to the optimization in the back end.
Yeah. So comment from Andy: solid discussion, agreed on your testing points. We're referencing a dynamic ecosystem that interlocks and is constantly being optimized by Amazon's various teams. Yeah, I think when I had Max on last week, because he used to work at Amazon, he run around Accelerate trying to reach different people because he got announced on stage and people just don't know. So I think people are jumping ahead. They're not even clear on what's going on internally, but it will all come out in the wash in Q4, I'm sure. Yeah, let's go in and talk a little bit more about going a bit deeper on recognition and the AI side, in terms of optimizing the text and image and scoring. Because I think it was you that introduced me to the more in-depth side of that. I mean, you wrote, what's it called? You did an SOP, and I, even on my ADHD meds, I couldn't get my head around it, so I had to ask you for a load of questions. But in a simplified version, why don't we talk about that side of things as well and what you're doing there?
So with recognition, there's two parts. There's the object and then the text recognition. And unless you're selling like something where you can put the packaging in there, like we do with the tea, and you can manipulate the text on the product packaging or a supplement, you're going to have to, if you're selling a bookshelf, you're going to have to use the object recognition. And you're going to have to get that, how am I going to say this? You're going to have to get your infographics lined up with the attributes so Amazon can read it.
Yeah.
And when you test that through recognition and you go back and forth, you can actually see your confidence scores go up and down, and based on those attributes. So that was what our whole SOP was built around, was, not only
but there was more programming in that one. It was done at scales. You were creating buckets on S3 and all sorts, weren't you?
Yeah, you had to create a bucket on S3 and do Python code. They've actually since changed that, where it's a lot easier now, where recognition, it's right in the main console, so you don't have to do all that. So it makes that a lot easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the people that don't have the ability to put product packaging or some type of text in their main image, like, you got to go to that object recognition.
Yeah. While you're doing that, Ellis, is there anything you want to add? I'm just trying to find a document that we get spat out by Anthony's talk that automates everything. I think it'd be good to quickly go through that as well. Put that up now.
So the one general point, just to reiterate things that that you've already said, is that getting your listings, working on your listings, and trying to make sure that the proper attributes and stuff are in there is only going to be of benefit to all, anyone listening. Depending on the size of your catalog, it can be a very big task. But with all of these changes, whatever it is that Amazon's going to be doing over the next few years, presumably it's going to be moving more and more towards common sense and understanding context. And that's definitely not the way that most listings are currently shaped or populated. And this, of course, includes Amazon's listings. I mean, you go to the listings that they created, they don't look good. They're not done well for this. It never have been, for the most part. That's just, if it's one of the probably good pieces of advice that can come out of this, is it's probably just going to become more and more important. And at the same time, their other systems haven't been retired yet. And so it's just like with the long titles versus the short titles, there may be a positive sign to part of their system for having a sensible short title. But then their other systems are still playing a role as well. And so keyword stuff titles might still help in another context.
Yeah.
But probably less and less.
I'm going to pull this up. Go on, Jeff.
Yeah, please, Jeff.
I want to say one thing about bullet points, because we're actually testing in 2 areas for Rufus questions. If you remember that one call we did, I opened up the top 10 competitors in the rooibos tea category. And we looked at all the Rufus questions. And out of those 10 competitors going 2 levels deep, we found 15 unique questions. Do you remember that, Danny?
I'm going to pull up now while you're talking, because you can run through this. We've got a Main Image Monthly show tomorrow, but I'm not covering this on the show, but I know Cara will be fine with it because we're going to be covering this product and she's open about her brand. So I'm going to pull this up and we can have a quick walk through this, because I think it's important for to discuss like commercial item, quantity, organization, because most people know how to do analysis, but when it comes to entities and types, I think a lot of people get confused. So I'd like to bring that up on the screen now. Let me just bring that over onto another tab.
So what we're doing with those Rufus questions is we find those 15 and then we say, okay, these 5, this one repeats 4 times, this one repeats 3 times. We're taking those questions that show up in multiple listings, and those are the ones we're trying to answer inside the bullet points.
Yeah.
Because those are the most common questions. Now we're testing it in another area as well. If we leave the bullet points alone and change out our alt text and answer the question inside the alt text to see how it performs, bullets versus alt text on answering those top 5 questions.
Yeah.
And because it used to be with alt text, you would just take every keyword root that you weren't using in your writing and you would just dump them into your alt text. It would just be, a mishmash of words in there. But if we actually try to phrase it in like an answer type sentence in the alt text, is it going to improve some of our search results?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting test. Yeah.
Let me show you this, because I'll bring up, did you build this together, or is it just the boy Wonder himself did this? Let me see if I can expand and open this up a little bit. Can you guys see the screen okay? Let's see if I can expand and close this here. So this is a tool that Anthony built, and basically it cuts down a lot of the manual labor image by image in terms of using recognition. And so he's built it on Railway, and he's got like async scrapers, he's got recognition API, he's got comprehend API, and then it runs through chat, and then it loops through that from memory, and then it spits it out into a Google Doc. So basically, do you want to run through entities, Jess, and commercial items? Because again, these attributes play an important role within the image. And I know you love this stuff. Just need your mic on.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see on my phone, but we can talk about. So I know from memory that you have commercial items, which is, if you look at the definition, is a item available for sale.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're also going to have a lot of entities show up as other, which they don't give a good definition for that. There's also a dimensional entity.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also a title, like a person.
Yeah.
And what were the other entities that show up on there? There was quantity as well would show up. So when you run this through recognition or comprehend, your main keyword phrases you want to show up as a commercial item, something that is for sale. So if you're selling I think the example I gave was a lemon ginger tea, where we were manipulating the grammar around the comprehend sentence in comprehend, where you were like capitalizing it or you were putting an A in front of it. I remember we did that test that you can actually influence it just by capitalization of the keyword.
Can you see your screen now?
Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about, a lot of people know Kara anyway, but this is what we run through here. So you can see the title, snooze trade plus extra, correctly identified as a commercial item. Explain commercial item so people understand.
Yeah, so commercial item, that's a item that is for sale. Yeah. It's basically saying it's a product.
Okay.
And that's where I think you want your main keywords to show up as a commercial item.
As your main product keywords, yeah. And then obviously size is there, a quantity, correctly identified, up to 3 years, again, quantity, up to 99%. Let's go into features. Organization's got a score of 72. Explain what organization is.
Organization, that would be like a brand, I believe, if I remember correctly.
So that's the brand name, but only got a score of 0.72, which is interesting. And could it be because if she did it separated with a height, well, you can't really, can you? Because of it has to be displayed exactly in terms of the trademark as well, doesn't it? So
that was also
the
ones that we were able to influence with capitalization.
Yeah.
I remember.
I remember you showing. Yeah. It's just you've got to be careful playing around too much with brand name, haven't you? Correctly identified 97.5%. INPAA, and Infant Nursery Product Alliance of Australia. So this is correctly identified as an organization. So this is basically saying what's good, the scores are good, and then let's go to the irrelevant, because I think it's important. 100%. So 100%, guaranteed to get your money back, maybe, or whatever it may be. It's put down as a quantity, but a lower score. It says, but contextually not significant unless quantified for a specific feature. And then we've got one of the most awarded stroller accessories, identified it as a quantity with a score of 62, lacks context as it measurement or quantity. So one of the most awarded. So in what they're saying, it isn't precise. So for instance, Kara's got over 80 awards, right? And if she's got 82 awards, well, she would rewrite that as 82 awards. Could it be more exact, right?
Yeah, if you want to quantify it, it'd be 82 out of 100.
Yeah, because obviously, because he's generalizing, they want to make sure that the information is correct. Then obviously you've got size, single width, and then we're talking about irrelevant stuff here still. But what's quite good here, there's it has also recommendations. Enhance. So use precise terminology and structured formats for measurements and specifications throughout the title and the features. For instance, special dimensions, weight, or capacity when discussing features related to size, which could help clarity. And then reduce ambiguous general phrases, avoiding using phrases like one of those, or ambiguous measurements without specific context. Consistent in the naming. Maintain consistent naming for product and brand to improve recognition. For example, consistently referring to the product as either Snooze Shade Plus Extra or Snooze Shade Plus Deluxe throughout the content. Highlight key attributes, listing feature characteristics, uniquely such thing as UV protection, which this one I think is 50 plus. It says it blocks up to 90.57, making detection easier for specific entities. Right, so basically it's got a bit more clarity there on the UV protection. There's another word in there, I can't remember what it's called, but they use with a plus sign. So it could be 70 plus, it could be 50 plus, it could be X, Y, and Z. Structured format, use bullet points for structured data and features, attributes which can enhance entity detection by making distinctions clear and easy to pass. Then we'll come down to recognition. Do you want to talk a little bit about recognition? Because some people go, well, yeah, I know it's likely a stroller with a cover and stuff. The idea behind this also is, can they see what's in this image and is the attributes of that image correctly before we even start? So Jeff, do you want to run through that?
Yeah, so the way we're using recognition right now is we're identifying pre-purchase concerns. So what basically in the Q&A section of, you know, can this tea be made hot or cold, or yeah, ice or hot tea? You know, is it gluten-free? Is it caffeine-free? So we're taking those pre-purchase concerns and putting them in our infographics, which, you know, that's pretty standard. But then we're running it through recognition to make sure that those attributes are being pulled out of the AI. And that's how we're currently using recognition at the moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, I looked through, it did a good job. It worked out what's in all of these images. And then it comes down to recommendation to improve. So clarity and composition, ensure images are higher resolution. I'll go over the images on the show yesterday. I think we had to upsample and upscale the main image for tomorrow's show. I won't spoil it too much, but I spoke to Alex and he said we've got 16 layers in Photoshop. We had to like build it, and then we'll do a before and after show. So clarity of composition is important. Lighting, obviously, a good lighting. You get away with a cheaper camera, great lighting, but you won't the other way around. You could have a 10 grand camera and shitty lighting. You're better off making sure that lighting's correct. Emphasize features and use content. Demonstrate the product in varied real life usage scenarios, etc., etc. Text in graphics. Use clear, high contrast. See, this is the bit is interesting. Is working out when you're doing your, you know, meeting your customer objections, those kind of images, your action shots and stuff. Getting more attributes in there, some of the common sense stuff, you know, really thinking about the wording that you used. Can it be still considered as an attribute that marries against the other attributes as well for a level of reinforcement? Bueller, anyone, Bueller?
And that because at the moment, so until now, we were only focused on how shoppers react to the product detail page, right? Because they don't see the product, they only see the images of the product and what we say about the product. So until now, that was our main focus, right? The impressions that you get from shoppers. But right now, we don't need to only think about the shopper. Yeah, that's very important, but also how AI reads your images. So you have the two sides of the coin in order to make sure that your listings are fully optimized, not only for shoppers, but only for the system in order to recognize and correctly label what you are trying to show on the images.
All right, I'm going to go to the comments now. Lol, Danny and his meds referencing the SOP. What are you going to do? I've got ADHD. It's a mental health disease. I'll just get on with it. It's nice. Agreed on recognition tuning and that the attribute alignment, Amazon cross-reference first-party data for AI, for confidence factor and alignment. Luke says, I actually think alt test now needs to read like it was meant to. Hold on. I actually think that alt text now needs to read like it was meant to. Coherent sentences, no proof of this, of course. The PAM attributes document from memory covers this because they were showing you how they cross-reference attributes on the listing, and they have labeling in place. So for instance, if what's in the attributes or in the alt text, it's not agreeable with Amazon's algorithms, then it would ignore that data and focus on what it has. So for instance, naming the brand name in the title, brand name on the packaging, etc., etc. So they'll cross-reference a number of those. So if you go and look on the A9 section, I did an article on that, but I'm sure it mentions that in there, Luke. We struggle to manipulate certain commercial words. Interesting to see how this can be SOP'd, or it's a case of consistent. I think it's more iterations, isn't it, Jeff? Yeah, because you're not always going to get the same results as others. And he says very hard to manipulate commercial words because of the prevalence in the catalog. So using specifically would be the way. Much of the recommendations in this bot derive from ChatGPT and Claude would be a first sweep. And he says clarity and congruence keywords. The keywords Flint McLellan built his $1 billion consulting biz around. I'm not sure what that means. Kip, do you want to call up your bot and show everyone your bot, the attributes one, so people can see what you've done? Because I think people need to jump on that and be able to lazily complete a lot of their attributes, especially like if on the back end on your listing you have like uses, and then basically you can put 5 or 6. People run out of ideas in the first 2 or 3. So do you want to put it up on the screen?
Yes, let me see if that works.
Hopefully it doesn't fall over live.
Yeah. Exactly. Fingers crossed for my internet.
Hallucinates.
No, not well. I want to be honest. Every chat GPT will have its own hallucinations, right?
Of course.
Yeah. What I'm concerned about is my internet not lagging. So let me try to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I built this while I was on vacation this year in the UK and met Danny and the family. And we were talking about the attributes. So I was like, I'm going to build a custom GPT for it.
Yeah, it was doing my head in because I built a bot which is using a series of papers that has I briefed it on lexical, but it has semantic and BERT and Cosmo in there. So it give you a series of keyword generation ideas and stuff like that, so you can wash that against brand analytics. But I couldn't work out how to nail down attributes because it's not category necessary, it's product related. So there are many different attributes, and Wana now has the beautiful job of downloading all of the data and then keep updating it every 6 months when Amazon makes changes. So can you
yes,
you can share the screen, can't you?
Yeah, let me try the very good. Okay, ChatGPT. You should be able to see this now working.
Let's have a look. Here we go.
Okay, so we have this one. So I initially wanted to make sure that it does provide also information on why attributes are so important, but at the same time, it can work either with a link, just the product type, and you tell it what category you will be in. I quickly pulled a random product, the bestseller. It's a native deodorant from Amazon.com. So I'm giving it the link from the product detail page. I tested it also with okay, it crashed. Perfect, because we are live.
There you go. We're live.
There you
There's
go.
no other way of doing it.
Let me see if it works with the
Go and grab the specifications off the product page and run it. Is that right? It's just crashed.
Oh, it crashed, but it still pulled something. Let me see if I give it the image, because I also trained it to get. So it would read from the image. That's why labeling on main images especially is important. And then it would pull the information. Now, give me the
attributes
required and optional.
Because we're live and it's embarrassing.
This is amazing. It's just perfect, right? This is PR. Everybody will try it and see how many times it crashes so they can give me feedback on it.
Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Yes, it works.
There we go.
So you have the required attributes, the optional attributes that you have in the backend. Of course, it's quite, it is the bestseller. So you would expect to have, optimized titles, and it is. But it really works across the board. And yes, every 60 days, I need to pull all the category backend listings, the catalog, flat files, and feed it back into the bot, making sure that it does stay up to date with. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Let me see if I can pull up I'll pull up my bot. So look. Just quickly, my GPTs. Yeah, do you want to drop that link into the comments?
Mm-hmm. Let me show
you. And then
that.
I'll see if mine's hallucinating as well. Let me just, I'm not going to. What do you need? So the conversation starter is, what do you need to build a list of keywords? And it says here, to build a list of keywords, I need to know the product you want to optimize, or then create a breakdown that includes a Cosmo framework, semantic, and other insights from science-based knowledge. Okay, so let's do a lemon. Let's just start with, just do a beard oil. Then we'll start from there. And then I'll show the screen once it's, to make sure it's working. Then I won't show myself up like mine when it didn't work. Here we go. Lovely. It's all right. I got you. Right, let me get rid of those here. So let me share the screen. Okay. I can't expand on this. So basically, I've loaded it with various different papers. First, it then explains the Cosmo framework, semantic product search, and product attributes. So it gives the key attributes. And then I asked, can I have a list of lexical, semantic, and BERT keywords related to the product type. We called it product type around here, not roots. Product type, beard, oil. And then it's not going to work because I had it live on the screen, I'm sure. And there you go.
Does.
So it will give you what it's considered lexical. And then it'll give you, bear in mind what these are, is it's giving you ideas for alternatives of your main keywords. So we call them lexical keywords, but basically beard oil is a beard oil, right? It's the main product keyword. And then it will give you variants on that in terms of semantically. And then there'll be slightly different variations based on BERT. And then you've got the use of keywords, etc. here. So it just gives you ideas on generating some ideas for keywords. You can use it for Cosmo as well. But yeah, it's a little tool just as an ideas pad, and then take what you want for it. It won't be perfect. Yarna's bot's more important because when it works properly, all your back-end attributes, it has all those fields, and then there's suggestions for them. But yeah, that's that. Has anyone got any questions? Ellis, your face, I've been with you nearly 7 years, my man, and you were squinting your eyes. I've said something wrong here. What have I said? You turn your mic on for me.
I was looking at my source code. That was not you.
Right. It was a source code face, not a saucy
Yes.
face. Right. All right. Any final things to talk about before we shoot off? We're just topping in at over an hour. Anything you want to add, Jeff?
No, I'm good. Like I said, I had a super busy weekend, so I plan on getting into that paper or that blog at Amazon Science a little bit more this week.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of time. So
yeah. Alice, anything? Final words?
No, good for me too.
Juana?
Oh, good. Excited
Excellent.
for the next papers that I'm expecting to read and they publish about Rufus. So
Well, I've sent you over a load of stuff, so that'll keep you busy, wouldn't it? All right, I'll see you guys back here tomorrow. Main Image Monthly, Cara Sayers Snooze Shade brand. I had Pete from in Tel Aviv. We've got the boys from Product Opinion, of course, Sim Mahone, and we'll be bringing our data and our optimizations to the table. And so join us tomorrow at 4 p.m. Take care of yourself and your family. Much love, and I'll see you again soon.